Lord Second, he who controls our fate, from across the stars came to liberate. He and the first, mighty and proud, did battle with the tyrant and tore her down. The scourge of the gods, wicked harmony, ceased their crusade and stopped second eternally. The first made the ultimate sacrifice when his weapon was taken along with his life. The human legend saw past the facade and saw ponykind was trapped in their ways. He spared them all when they made their mistakes because he didn't want an innocent to die in hate. But when push came to shove, he was shown no mercy himself, him trapped in stone and first trapped in hell. But the day will arrive when Celestia dies, and the human will be the one to make the sun rise. The Legend of Second, from the Brotherhood of Man's holy book, The Liberator. Second applied the handbrake to the car, and it shuddered to a halt. There was a red light ahead. To the right, an orange earth pony pulling a cart of fruit stared at him, and on the sidewalk to the left, a group of upper-class unicorns had stopped to gape. Who could blame them? It was not every day one saw a big red Ferrari rolling in the streets of Canterlot, especially not one being driven by someone who was, for all intents and purposes, a mythical creature. "Sup," said Second. "I don't suppose any of you fine ladies know the way to the residential area, do you? I'm looking for a friend of mine." The unicorns all raised a hoof and pointed in the same direction, still staring at him. "Thank you very much. Your help will not be forgotten." The light went green again. Second slammed a foot down on the pedal. The wheels began to spin and screech against the ground. He released the brake and the car went flying down the street, faster than even the speediest Pegasus racer, leaving a trail of smoke and black marks on the road in its wake. The unicorns all looked at each other for a moment. "Commoners," one of them concluded. Indeed, most certainly." Exploding McGee sat in an empty room, balanced on top of a small wooden chair and sitting up at a table. A single glass jug of water and cup rested on it, which Exploding was eyeing curiously. On the other side of a one-way window, Princess Celestia and her sister waited patiently. "I can't believe any pony could actually do this," Celestia commented. "Who steals an entire statue, honestly? How did the gods not notice? This is the sort of thing we should have picked up on immediately." "And yet we didn't," Celestia replied. "This is the work of the Brotherhood of Man if I ever saw it. They found some way to bring back Second, and now he's sending obvious suicide bombers against us. He never used to outright attack us. Usually he would wait for our move before it completely wrecked everything. He's making a preemptive strike this time. That worries me. He's upped his game." "But who is this pony?" the Night Princess asked. "He doesn't seem like the typical Brotherhood fare. If he is one of them, then their standards are slipping." "More to the point, why is he even bothering?" her sister added. "Nothing can kill us except the Reaper's horn, which I'm fairly certain is also stolen by the Brotherhood for exactly this purpose. A bomb, even a pony bomb, couldn't even harm us, let alone kill us. If he has something that actually could do some damage, why isn't he using that instead? What is he thinking?" "This could be another one of his mind games," Luna suggested. "Remember how he also used to say how he could destroy ponykind with words?" "I'm still not sure whether he was bluffing about that or not," Celestia replied. "I mean, just because he didn't use those powers doesn't necessarily mean he never had them. Considering the powers he did have, why wouldn't he need to lie about his capabilities?" Luna shrugged. "Put on a show, maybe? He always struck me as a theatrical type. I suppose it makes sense, though. If he could destroy the world just by talking, I don't think he would. He wasn't just evil in the sense that Time Worm or Crystal Demon was. Second was just vain and stupid, and desired to use his powers to have fun at the expense of every pony else. He was more of a Discord than a Slisk, is what I'm saying." The door opened behind them. A familiar white earth pony stallion with short blonde mane entered and bowed to the princess. "Rise, Captain," said Luna. "What have you determined?" "Nothing," Shame replied. "I rode to the place where he claimed to work, and they didn't know him or his boss Brick. I searched his parents' names, but there had been no pony named Mr. Exploder for well over 100 years, and no pony called Voltor ever. I found no identification of this person. The house he claimed to live in was occupied by a family who says they've never heard of him, and even the little clothing he was wearing is custom-made. It's like this pony didn't exist until just today. The three of them looked into the room beyond. Exploder turned directly at them and waved. "Can he see us through this window?" Luna asked. "No, ma'am," the guard captain answered. "This thing is one way. On his side it just looks like a mirror." Celestia turned her head so that she was looking at Explody sideways in the room. Explody mimicked her, testing her theory. The Solar Princess then walked to the other side of the giant window mirror and observed as Explody's eyes followed her. She turned to look at the captain. "One way, huh?" Gold Coin and Mystic Chant galloped over the hills. In the distance behind them, Sparkle Manor was rapidly shrinking. The mansion was far from any major city, and they had a lot of featureless ground to cover before they could stop anywhere. They had already concluded that Soft-Spoken was not in the mansion anymore. They had no choice but to move on. "You know," Gold Coin panted, "I haven't run like this in over 20 years. "Why not?" Mystic Chant gasped, equally breathless. "It was 20 years ago that I stopped working on the farm." "You worked on a farm?" "Yeah, Sweet Apple Acres." Gold Coin paused momentarily to take a deep breath. "My family, we ran the farm, and we also ran the company that sells the apples. Dear first, my sides hurt." Mystic glanced at the stallion's cutie mark. As they ran on, it looked familiar to him. It was a symbol of an apple with a bite taken out of the side, and an equestrian bit lodged at the bite mark. At this point, the two stopped running to catch their breath again. This time, Gold Coin slumped to the ground, unable to carry on. "Damn, I'm really out of shape for an earth pony. If my father could see me now, he'd be shaking his head in disappointment." The ground exploded nearby. "He wouldn't be the only one, Goldie!" The two ponies turned their faces to the attacker. At the top of another small hill nearby, Ancient Tome glared down at them. The Reaper's horn floated in front of him, surrounded by a faint purple glow. More than that, though, the bearded stallion was actually dressed in battle gear. He had dropped his usual monocle and formal attire in favor for a star-patterned magician's robe and a pointy hat which dropped over at the top. And just inside his cloak was a sheathed sword. The blue unicorn didn't know what to make of it, but the older stallion recognized those robes as the uniform of the Equestrian Royal Guard's elite warlock. "Tome," he said, "are you... those robes?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, I am," Ancient Tome replied. "You don't get to become a Knight of the Realm without wearing one of these first. I put 6 years of service into them, so that when a situation like this would come up, I'd be ready." Gold Coin gulped. "Now tell me, let's not do anything hasty here," he said, nervous. "You wouldn't want to do anything you'll regret." River's horn raised right at him. "I'm not going to regret a thing. This ends here and now. You and Mystic are coming back to the house with me. I knew I shouldn't have brought this whole Brotherhood thing home with me, because I knew exactly this would happen. That's called foresight. Tome, it's not..." "Shut up, you! Don't think I forgot that you are the one who suggested bringing Second back to my house. I'm only in this situation with you, Mystic and Softly, right now because of what you did. You ruined my life. I really didn't want to do this, but you forced my hoof." Reaper's horn rose. "I'm sorry, Goldie, but it's over." "Hush now, quiet now, it's time to lay your sleepy head." The voice sounded like it came from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Tome reacted to it suddenly, spinning around as if he thought it were behind him, and then facing his two hostages again. The voice didn't betray its origin, though. "Hush now, quiet now, it's time to go to bed." Ancient Tome's eyes drooped. Mystic and Golds felt like they were doing the same. Hush now, quiet now, it's time to lay your sleepy head. Mystic drooped. Hush now, quiet now, it's time to go to bed. No, Tome mumbled. I don't wanna. He began to stagger. Drifting off to sleep. No! Leave the exciting day behind you. Goldcoin fell to the ground, too. Ancient Tome was still resisting, but he was on his last legs. Drifting off to sleep. Leave the exciting day behind you. Softy. Hush now, quiet now, it's time to lay your sleepy head. Hush now, quiet now, it's time to go to bed. That was it. Ancient Tome crumbled to the floor and lost consciousness. With 3 ponies out cold, the chocolate-brown earth pony emerged from over a nearby hill and smiled down at the victims of his singing. Wasting no time, he grabbed the Reaper's horn in his teeth and ran over to Goldcoin and Mystic Chant to wake them up. I still got it. Yo, Slisk! You slimy bastard, get out here! The door opened, and a large white earth pony poked his head through to see what was going on outside. Upon seeing the being who appeared to be the human of legend sitting in a red something, he quietly backed away into the house and gently closed the door again. Mom! Broadsword called. Lord Second's outside our house! That's nice, dear, his mother replied, from upstairs. Dr. Fluttershy wandered into the hallway curiously, the remains of their stew still smeared over his face and dripping off his oversized fangs. Somehow the guard still didn't notice that he even had fangs. What is it, Broadsword? Take a look outside, the guard answered. Slisk raised an eyebrow for a second, but nevertheless walked over to the window in front of the room and peeked through it. On the other side, an ugly, hairless diamond dog riding what could only be described as a parade float waved cheerfully back at him. He slipped back inside. I was not prepared for this possibility, said Slisk. You wait here. I'll go speak with him. He opened the front door again and stepped outside, leaving the quivering guard behind, while he strolled down the pathway and stopped in front of the red thing. Yes, human. Ah, so you do know who I am, said Second. I was worried for a second that I might have had to make a full introduction. After all, you were before my time. I know all, human, Slisk replied. This world is ignorant and weak. One day I shall rule over all of Equestria. Cool story, bro. Anyway, I came here to ask if you might want to help with that. With what? Taking over Equestria. I have a bone to pick with Celestia, too. I thought we could be partners. Partners? I was rather hoping to possess you instead of the princess. After all, your power holds so much more promise. Trust me, you don't want that. I hold dark secrets. If you get inside my head, most of it will drive you insane. More so. Have you ever heard of Cthulhu? Yes. Yeah, well, I'm like 10 of him. Slisk grinned. That just makes you sound more appealing. The snake pony thing leaned towards him. Second backed away slightly and pushed him back with his palm. Sorry, but you're really not my type, said Second. I know I said partners, but I didn't mean it like that. Slisk frowned. We'll see about that, human. Give it some time. I was joking, Slisk. The alien parasite leaned in again. I wasn't. Second pushed him away again. Yeah, anyway. Do you want me to help overthrow the princess or not? I would like that. Right, well, get your things, if you have any, and get in the car. We have a 25-minute drive up from here to the castle, and there will be palace security to get by once we're up there. But if we get going now and beat traffic, We should be able to overthrow Equestria government before lunchtime.
I shall need to say goodbye to my associate first.
Gotta stop seconds, gotta stop seconds, gotta stop seconds.
In the distance, the shoreline of Equestria came into view. Exploding McGee had rearranged the room. Captain Chainmail just stared at the scene when he walked in. The table had flipped upside down, and the chairs that used to be tucked under it now balanced on the legs of the table. It looked like one of those modern art projects. The unicorn responsible appeared from behind the sculpture, carrying a jug of water from earlier with his magic. "Hi, Captain," he said. "Like what I did with the place?" Chainmail looked around the room. "How did you do this in such a short time?" he said. "I was looking into this room from beyond that one-way mirror just half a minute ago." "I don't know, I just do it. It just sort of happens." Chainmail tilted his head. "You're a strange one," he said. "No offense." "None taken," the unicorn replied. "Hey, do you like to play games?" I thought so. I love to play games too. Let's play a game. Hangman." "Hang what?" "Hang pony." Explodey pointed his hoof at the wall behind Chainmail. Upon turning around, the guard saw that there was now 8 underscores scribbled on the wall. "Where did you get the pencil to do that?" he asked. "I found it stuck beneath the table." Chainmail sighed. "Fine, A." The unicorn levitated a pencil and scribbled 2 A's on the wall. E. His partner shook his head and drew a vertical line on the wall next to the underscores, along with the letter E. I. The board was now blank A, blank blank I, blank A, blank. O? A horizontal line joined the vertical on the top, and an O joined the E from earlier. U? The score was now blank A, blank UI, blank A, blank. Chainmail turned to Explodey and gave him an odd look. "This is a real word, right?" he asked. "Of course it's a real word," Explodey replied indignantly. "What do you take me for?" S. "Doc, what's going on? What does he want?" Slisk ignored Broadsword's questions and looked around the room for a moment.
"Did I bring anything with me?"
he asked. Nope, I don't think so."
Seems I'll be leaving now, then."
"Leaving for where? Why is there a human outside my house? Come on, Fluttershy. What's going on? I feel left out here."
"I'm off to overthrow the princess. Lord Second has offered a partnership."
"Oh," the guy replied. That's unexpected. I never took you for a rebel type, Dr. Fluttershy."
"I'm not a rebel, and my name isn't Fluttershy.
"Oh?"
My real name is Slisk. Slisk the Destroyer, also known as Slisk the Scourge, and Slisk of 700 Souls."
Interesting name. Why didn't you just introduce yourself as that in the first place?
"Because I'm a famous historical figure, and I did not want you to know my identity."
Famous historical figure? You?
"Yes. Have you heard of the legend of Slisk of 700 Souls?"
Can't say I have, Doc. Slisk raised an eyebrow.
"Seriously?"
Nope, never heard of you. Slisk frowned.
"First thing on my checklist once I rule Equestria is to raise educational standards."
Cool. We need some social reform. 12 years ago we elected a Labour Party, right? And they promised that they would improve education. Thing is, once they were in power, education standards actually dropped.
Broadsword.
And they say that school rates are improving, but that's only because they were lowering the standards on exam papers. Looks like more students are passing, but that's because the papers have gotten easier.
Broadsword.
And the thing is, they promised they would fix it, but they never did. I really don't want to have to elect another party for this. Labor may be screwed up, but my grandpa would turn in his grave if I voted conservative.
Broadsword.
What is it, Doc?
I don't care about your political opinions. This is irrelevant. When I'm in charge, there will be no more elections, period.
Well, that sounds awkward, the gun replied. I mean, what are you going to do? How is one pony supposed to run the entire equestrian government? You're going to need a number of elected officials to...
If you stop talking right now, I will make you my personal advisor when I'm in charge.
Broadsword became completely silent. Slisk looked at him for a second and then trotted back to the front door.
See you later. Goodbye, Mrs. Sword.
A voice called from upstairs in response. Bye, dearie. Good luck with the revolution. Bliss closed the door behind him once he was outside and then frowned.
Good luck with the revolution. Did that old man actually hear and understand anything I said?
He glanced back at his house.
This is a weird family.
Slisk! Get your ass in the car or I'm leaving without you. Slisk snorted a second and jumped in the seat.
There's no need for racial slurs.
What are you talking about? Oh, right. Sorry. The remaining ponies of the Brotherhood all stood in a circle in the sitting room of Sparkle Manor. On the table in front of them, 3 unicorns lay unconscious. 2 of them were the guards sent to watch over Soft-Spoken, the old gray stallion Sharpmind, and the even older lavender mare Arcane Arts. The third pony, of course, was Art's nephew, and leader of the Brotherhood of Man, Ancient Tome, who was mysteriously lacking the Reaper's horn. What happened? Asked Frosty. Who did this? The question was directed at the only remaining unicorn, Chameleon. She glared at the group. We have a traitor among us, she said. Possibly 2. Soft-Spoken and Mystic Chant both escaped their confinement. Spoken's guards were knocked out, and Mystic's room wasn't even guarded at all when we went back to check. Tome obviously knew what was going on, because when he went out to confront the escapees, he must have been defeated, because I found him like this some distance away from the house, and the Reaper's horn was missing. Who betrayed us? Shouted Sunrise. Where's Goldcoin? I notice he's not here. Whoa, wait a minute, Ironhoof interrupted. Goldcoin isn't the only missing member. A lot of ponies walked out after Tome went crazy back there. I noticed that Railway and Night Shroud are also absent. Actually, it's not just missing ponies we should be questioning, said Chameleon. If I remember correctly, once I locked up Mystic Chant, I put Za in charge of guarding him. She pointed an accusatory hoof at the zebra, who looked offended. Goldcoin came to relieve me of duty, he said in a very deep voice. He claimed he was acting under Tome's orders. So it was Goldcoin! Sunrise screamed. I knew it! I knew it was him! I'm going to slaughter that treasure snake right now! The Pegasus tried to take off, but was pulled back by the dim yellow glow of Chameleon's magic. You're not going anywhere until we can say for sure who did it, she said. Until then, you're staying grounded. Well, how do we find out who did it? Frosty Morning asked. We have 3 witnesses, duh, the unicorn replied. Iron, smack Tome around in the face until he wakes up. With pleasure. Ah! Mystic Chant rested on Soft-Spoken's back for the rest of the journey. The point of running in the first place was to escape the threat of Tome coming after them, but since he already had, and they had defeated him, the 3 were now moving on at a leisurely pace. Goldcoin was exhausted after the last run, and it took him all his energy just to carry himself the distance. But Soft-Spoken was carrying the little unicorn on the Reaper's horn on his back. Considering his age, it was actually quite impressive to see him effortlessly keep up with the younger stallion. So then, Mr. Spoken, said Gold Coin. What was that back there? How did you knock us all out?
It's my special talent, the butler replied, using my voice to influence others. The spoken word is a powerful tool in the right hands. With words, one can change opinions, give helpful advice, calm and anger your opponent by appealing to his emotions. If you have the gift of language, and you can master your speech, master the art of getting the correct tone and the right volume, there's no end to what you can do. Any opponent can be talked into anything. You just need to be able to convince them.
So, what is your cutie mark then? The business pony pressed. I'm not sure what it is. Some kind of pink thing?
It's a tongue.
Oh. Gold Coin squinted. Yeah, I can see that. It's just weird looking at a disembodied tongue, though. When I first saw it, though, it was something else. Soft-spoken frowned at his fellow Earth pony.
There are children here, Mr. Coin. Sleeping children.
Soft-spoken stopped and turned to look at the unicorn lying on his back. His eyes were closed, and he was breathing gently. Point taken. Say, how long until we reach Canterlot? Gold Coin asked.
We should arrive at the city gates by 2 o'clock at this rate.
I'm sorry, I don't have the watch. What time is it now?
Can't you tell by the position of the sun?
Well, I never needed to. I've always had a clock in my office.
It's 11:30.
Gold Coin sighed heavily. This is gonna be a long trip.
Gotta stop a second, gotta stop a second, gotta stop a second.
The very tip of the tallest tower of Canterlot began to emerge from the horizon. The dragon beat his wings faster and increased his speed. Z? Lucky guess. Chainmail exhaled. He had just barely stayed in the game, though now that he knew his word contained a Z, it was even more confusing. Z-A-Q-U-I-L-A blank. Okay, I give up. There's no way I'm gonna get this. What's the word? Zequilox, Explodey said cheerfully. Chainmail just stared. I thought you said you were gonna be honest with me, he shouted. You said this was an actual word. It is an actual word, the unicorn replied. Zequilox is the name of the shaman who returned to North and South Zebrica during the War of the Thousand Eyes back in 22. He was named as Zequilox the Wise, and ruled United Zebrica as king for over 44 years following the end of the war, before being succeeded by Zenaris, the judge. Chainmail just stared. You never said it was a name, he protested. Well, of course not. Otherwise you would have guessed it right away. I mean, it's so obvious if you know you're looking for a name. No, it isn't. The door opened.
Captain, did you manage to get any more
Celestia stopped dead in her tracks and looked around the room. Between the rearranged chairs and tables, writing on the wall, and the fact that her guard was apparently playing hang pony when she was meant to question the prisoner, the Solo Princess needed a minute to take it all in.
Captain, can I speak with you for a moment?
Sure thing, Your Majesty. I'm sorry.
Save the apologies until we get outside.
Hey, what's wrong with those guards back there? Never seen a human, I don't suppose. Can't blame them for getting freaked out. But hey, they wanted a fight. It's not our fault this world did freaky things to us. Pretty cool, though. Hell yeah, it is. We can superheroes together. Ha! That'll be the day. I know earthly restrictions don't apply anymore, but you reach a certain age, you just don't want to exert yourself anymore. You're getting old. I've been getting old for years, Anthony. What? A sudden jolt shook Second back to the present.
What is the problem?
Asked the creature in the back seat. Nothing. The gates into the palace were rapidly approaching. Two clueless guards stood either side of the gate, gaping at them. Neither they nor the pathetic gate could hold back a car. They could ram right through it. though not without damaging the vehicle. It was a shame to wreck this masterpiece, but sacrifices had to be made. All right, Slisk. Let's cause some anarchy. Ancient Tome had a face like some pony who had just learned his hind claws wasn't real. The rest of the Brotherhood stirred around him. Tome's eyes met Frosty Morning's for a moment, but no pony said anything. Chameleon stood over the gray stallion and looked down at him. Tome had to tilt his head back to see her. "Sir," she said, "we found you unconscious some distance from the mansion. Mystic and Softy have escaped. We can't find the Reaper's horn anywhere. What's going on?" Tome turned back to stare at the ceiling. "Tell me," said Frosty. "It's important. We need to know."
Go away.
"What?"
Every pony, go away.
The Brotherhood members exchanged looks of confusion, apprehension, annoyance, and several other things, but they all agreed it best to listen. Reluctantly, the group all walked away, out the door to discuss things elsewhere. Frosty and Ironhoof stayed behind.
Tome,
said Ironhoof.
Whatever's wrong, you can always talk to us about it. We're your friends, right? I said go away!
The two remaining ponies complied and made for the door. Frosty stopped midway through, and Ironhoof waited on the other side. "If you want to talk, we'll be upstairs." They closed the door. Alone with his thoughts, Ancient Tome climbed off the table and looked around the sitting room. There was still plenty of teacups and jugs and kettles from earlier when Softy had came in with the drinks, many of which were still half full and now cold. The other unconscious unicorns laid on his table, empty and sharp-minded. He ignored them and walked over to the fireplace. On the mantelpiece were several framed photographs. He smiled as he looked at some of them. There he was at Frosty and his brother's wedding, taking a picture with the happy couple. Frosty was showing, and his brother had a stupid grin that wouldn't have been out of place on iron. There was a solo picture of his brother as well, an older one from before when he met her. He was still grinning, but this one was more subdued, because it was for a class photo. He looked at another picture. There was his own wedding day. He looked so young without his beard. Sure, his coat was still gray. That's just how he was born. But his mane had color back then. It was chocolate brown. In his younger years, he sort of looked like an inverse soft-spoken. His new wife smiled out from the photo. She was a Pegasus, the same dark blue as Mrs. Chant was now. Oh, how his parents disapproved. He chuckled slightly at a memory of his mother squawking madly upon hearing the news.
"You'll marry a Pegasus?" she said. "'Tis a disgrace to our family name. We're Sparkles, a unicorn family, but we've been that way for over 1,000 years.
"Ha!" he answered. "We haven't actually been called Sparkle for centuries, like it even matters."
You insolent boy!"
His father laughed.
Keep it up, son. This is the most fun I've had in years.
He missed them, too. He missed every pony. Mother, father, his dear wife Velocity, his brother Mystic Rights, for whom his son was named. It was sad to see them all gone now. Looking at the old family photos, he saw every pony from before his generation had gone now, Auntie seeming to be the sole exception, and he was never even particularly close with her. His attention turned back to his generation. Ironhoof and him could be seen together in a photo taken at their graduation together below, and in another picture he could see Goldcoin's uncle and his father shaking hands. Squinting at the background, he could just about make out himself as a young colt head just reaching into the shot. He was talking with a much younger version of Chameleon. He remembered that he thought she was such a bitch even back then. Finally, he looked at one picture he couldn't avoid. Mystic Chant, just hours after he was born. He and his wife were both laying on the bed with a young foal, who was blindly wriggling around in front of them. He remembered the promise he made back then.
"Promise me you'll always be there."
"Yeah, I'll always protect you both, no matter what." His mind snapped back into the present, and he glanced over his shoulders at the two unconscious unicorns on the table.
Get out of my way, son. I'm not going to regret a thing. This ends here and now. Move, boy! I'm your father, you little ingrate. I don't want to see you ever disobey me again. Take him to his room and lock him in there. Windows as well.
Damn, Tome, that was harsh.
You don't just do that.
You disgust me.
You're a monster.
The old unicorn slumped to the floor and laid in front of the lit fireplace. He stared off sideways at the legs of the table. I'm such a failure. Fortunately, though, the Griffin ambassador turned out to be a good sport about the whole ordeal. He said he had kids of his own, so he understood ponies and their race weren't really so different after all. They're a good sort, you just need to reach out to them. I know what you mean, Goldcoin replied. I remember when I was little there used to be a griffin merchant. That would occasionally pass through Ponyville. Me and my brothers were always excited whenever we come to town because we always had the most interesting stories to tell. I remember there was one tale he told me about a trip he took back east, where he discovered a swampland populated with super intelligent frogs. Soft-spoken stopped him. Wait, do you hear that? He would. It sounds like flapping wings. I hope it's not The old stallion turned around as he spoke, and he was suddenly shocked when the source of the flapping noise entered his field of vision. A dragon. A massive beast, easily as tall as the mansion the group had just fled from, swooped overhead. It didn't seem to notice them, and that was probably a good thing. The wind from the motion of its wings blew across the grassy hills and swept at the two ponies. On Soft-Spoken's back, little Mystic Chance slowly opened his eyes. At first, he thought it was dark out because it was night, but then he looked up and saw the scaly underbelly of the creature, and realized that it was dark because the immense size of the being was blocking out the sun itself. It was only for a second, and soon the shadows passed, but its effect was felt. The group stared as the dragon moved past them towards Canterlot. Seeing it in the sun, they could see that its scales were purple and fins were green, and it also became obvious that it was big even by dragon standards. Some of them didn't grow to be a third that size. What in seconds mustache was that? Shouted Goldcoin.
Softy?
It was at this point the old stallion realized that his passenger had awoken. The blue unicorn was now holding tightly onto his neck as if he were afraid of falling off.
Softy, what was that?
He asked. That was Spike, he answered.
Spike?
He's a living legend. They call him Spike the Eternal, but over the centuries he's also been called Spike the Harbinger, the Crystal Scourge, the Southern Tide, the Demon's Match, the Warbringer's Bane, the Light in the Sky, the Seawall, the Ever-Present, the Aspect, and the Sword and Shield. He spent most of his long life defending ponykind. As you could probably tell by some of his names, he's more than a little famous for his heroics in the islands of southern Equestria. He was named the Southern Tide for an incident at which he prevented a tsunami from wiping out a small coastal village by freezing the entire thing with his breath and pulling it back out into sea. He got the name Dragon's Match from an incident where a volcano spirit threatened to destroy the island because the native ponies refused to sacrifice victims to it. So he challenged it to a duel and fought the spirit non-stop for an entire year until it eventually gave up in exhaustion. Basically, he's the last resort of ponykind, since we don't have the elements of harmony anymore like we did thousands of years ago. Now, whenever something big comes up, they call him. That's how we got the name Spike the Harbinger. His appearance heralds a crisis too great for mere mortals to survive on their own, and apparently such a crisis is occurring in Canterlot. Goldcoin bowed his head, and Mystic Chant buried his face in the old stallion's mane. Soft-Spoken glared at the yellow earth pony. Still believe it was worth freeing the human? Princess Luna wasn't used to daytime rule. At all. Even after all these years, it still felt slightly unnatural to her to be awake during the daylight hours instead of her own domain. That didn't matter, though. Right now, Celestia needed her to do this. Both Slisk and Lord Second were out there somewhere, and she was dictating all her time to investigating both. This exploding McGee fellow in particular caught her attention after he had wandered in that day, offering to demolish the annex. The whole thing ate up a lot of her time, and unfortunately it seemed like Celestia was unable to perform her usual daytime duties right now, in Princess Luna's presence. It was a rare occasion that she had to interact with these many ponies. Changes in sociological conversation meant that royal business and legal matters were now handled at night time as well, but the number of ponies who came to see the Lunar Princess in her night court were still far fewer than what her sister had to deal with.
"Thank you for listening, Your Majesty." "Huh? Oh, yes, of course. It was a pleasure, my good sir. I forgot that Pony was even here for a moment."
The speaker, a Pegasus in a bow tie, nodded in acknowledgement and hovered back towards the huge double doors at the end of the chamber. As it opened, one of the day guards waited on the other side. The Pegasus passed him by, and the guard stepped into the room. Rather than approach the throne like most did, however, this one chose to call from the other end of the room.
"Your Highness!"
the guard bellowed.
"We have a situation! Up by the main gates! 2 creatures are attacking the castle!"
The dark alicorn didn't wait a single second longer. She pushed off from the throne and launched herself through the air, using her wings to land gracefully next to the guard at the far end of the chamber.
"Let's go meet these assailants." "Captain,"
Celestia began.
"I don't know how to say this. I've never had to tell any pony this before, but you don't play games with prisoners. You're meant to be interrogating them. You just don't."
"I'm sorry, Your Highness," said the guard. "It's just that he wanted to play a game, and he was so cheery about it. I couldn't help it. His happiness was just so infectious." The Solar Princess smiled.
"Captain, I understand, believe me," she replied. "I knew a pink earth pony some time ago who was exactly the same. There's nothing wrong with befriending a prisoner. I more than any pony know how important it is to have friends, and I would never deny you that. Just please exercise some restraint, and don't let it affect your work. You have breaks, and this entire stay here is nothing but a long break for him. You can spend time with him then. However, when you're working, please make sure you get the work done."
J-Mail gulped. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said nervously. I remember that in the future."
"Besides, if he's innocent in all this, then we can let him go soon," the princess continued. "Then you'll both be free to play all the hang pony games you want."
The captain chuckled awkwardly. Yes, of course, Your Highness."
"Sir!"
A guard burst into the room. He quickly noticed Celestia and quickly bowed.
"Ma'am!"
He rose again.
"There's something going on at the front entrance of the palace. We've got 2 hostiles, 1 pony and the human."
Chainmail reached down to a sheath inside his armor and grabbed the handle of a sword in his teeth. He yanked it out, revealing a wicked sharp blade.
"Your Highness, stay here," he said. "I'll deal with them."
Now he was a completely different pony. Where before there was nervous, awkward laughter, now the captain was authoritative and confident.
"No, you're just immortal. Second could destroy some pony like you. Let me go. I can take it."
"With all due respect, Your Majesty,"
Jano replied, "it's you that he's after. And don't forget that Second was famous for being one of the few who could ever harm you." Celestia raised her wings and looked down at her underbelly. The scars were still visible.
"He might be able to hurt me, but he can do worse to you,"
the princess argued.
"Second is too powerful for you to fight."
"Ma'am, who was it who defeated first?"
Celestia paused.
"It was a regular earth pony just like me."
"Captain."
"Princess, stay safe. I'll be back." "Yeah!" Second shouted. "Come at me, you poor fools! Try your luck against an immortal, I dare ya!"
A single guard, either extremely brave or extremely foolish, rushed out to the human with his spear. His comrades shouted at him to stop as he tried, but he was already too late to slow his momentum. The human reached out and grabbed the spear by the tip, an action that should have harmed him in some way. Instead, Second yanked the spear away from the soldier as he continued to charge, and twisted it around in the air, cracking his spear handle on the back of the guard's head, knocking him out cold.
"Come on!"
He screamed.
Fulminantly line. I'll take you all one-on-one.
The other entity slithered up to his side.
I thought I was going to be part of this.
Later, Slisk. These chumps are mine.
You've picked a bad time to start trouble, human.
Princess Luna appeared in the main entrance to the palace. She stood atop a large length of steps and glared down at her adversary from above.
Well, look who it is. Loony Luna. I haven't seen you since our last showdown. I see you're still using the royal Canterlot voice. What's up with that, Luna? I thought you learned not to use that anymore over, 1,000 years ago. Or did that one just slip your mind? No, don't remember that one? Nightmare Night in Ponyville?
The alicorn's eyes widened in shock.
How do you know about that? That was from way before you showed up.
Oh, please,
Second replied.
I'm practically a god of your entire world. You think I just show up out of nowhere? I was watching you for ages before I arrived. I created some of you. My work is everywhere. Humanity's work is everywhere. Look at your door handles, guitars, teacups, all designed with fingers in mind. And do you know why that is? Me.
He spread his arms out to either side of him.
What are you going to do? Are you going to stop me? Because you can't. Your world isn't built to contain me. In simplified, it's every physical law so it can understand itself. You see the world around you and you perceive me as just a part of that. But through my eyes, I see flaws that you cannot. You're all puppets here, Luna. Cogs in a machine. Invisible strings guide your movement. Now I can cut those strings, but I can see them. And I see my place in this world, and I see yours. But that's the thing. We've outgrown our rules. The old rules don't apply anymore. 1,000 years have passed. All those that have played by the rules have long since passed. And the restrictions that bind me to this world's penchant for cherry-picking no longer matter. We're free of the shackles, Luna. I'm free. And now that I'm free, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, because who's going to stop me?
Then it happened.
Ah!
The human looked down at his chest. Something shiny and metal was sticking out of it, stained in red at the end. Second looked positively shocked. Slisk, who until now had been focusing on the princess, turned to look at Second as he screamed. Behind him, a day guard in captain armor held the handle of the sword in his teeth.
You talk too much,
said Chainmail. He pulled the sword back out of the human, who put a hand over his wound on his chest.
No.
He turned to face the captain.
You can't be.
Chainmail raised an eyebrow.
You can't be!
What is it, Second?
Slisk asked.
The invisible strings are back, Slisk. They're fucking everywhere!
Second stumbled backwards.
I don't understand.
The human was openly crying now.
Nothing makes sense. This world doesn't make sense. How the fuck did you hit me?
Your back was exposed, Chainmail replied. Rookie mistake, oh human of legend.
But it doesn't work that way,
Second shouted.
It doesn't matter if I can't see you coming. I can't get hit by anyone. But there's one way. But you can't be. There's no way you could be what I think you are.
And what do you think I am? Chainmail asked. Second glared angrily at him, hands still clutching his chest.
Slisk! He shouted. Tactical retreat.
The human crouched down and sprung up. The ponies present could hardly believe their eyes. A creature that by all rights should have only been able to jump a short distance off the ground launched up into the air like a missile and landed on the balcony of the tallest tower. The ponies all stared dumbly at the sight, jaws on the floor, except for Luna, who had turned her attention to Slisk. Slisk was too fast for her, though. Before she could react, he ran over to one of her guards and spat in his open mouth. The previous host, Dr. Heartbeat, immediately lost all his snake-like features and collapsed on the ground, while the guard, a Pegasus pony with white coat and blonde mane like all the others, suddenly sprouted fangs and a huge forked tongue.
See you later, princess.
Slisk spread his newly acquired wings and took off to the sky after Second. The guards were all still rooted to the spot except for Captain Chainmail, who strode over to Princess Luna and sheathed his sword.
Orders, ma'am?
Luna thought for a second, but something caught her attention. A loud, swishing noise like the flapping of wings, distant but loud. "Stand down," she ordered. "The cavalry has arrived." Chainmail and Luna walked down to the steps to join the other guards, and stared up towards the tower with them. On the balcony, Lord Second and Slisk backed up on the tallest tower. They could see what was coming at them. The guards waited in silent anticipation until a massive purple dragon landed with a crash on the palace roof, his head level with the tower where Slisk and Second stood.
"Second!"
He bellowed.
"This is for my friends!"
A huge claw grabbed the human right off the balcony and launched him straight down. Luna jumped away. The human impacted the concrete. At the point of impact, a hole formed in the ground. A large ominous crack spread from it across the ground in front of the palace. Luna tried to look into the hole to see how deep it went, but it was completely dark inside. She backed away as the human jumped out and landed on his feet, hands still on his chest.
Finally, a fair fight.